I'll put good afternoon, mayors, and to our guest speaker, Sir Joaquin. Good afternoon po. Thank you for joining us today. This is our second webinar for this Saturday. This morning, we attended the webinar on COVID-19 testing, contact tracing, and strengthening the health and public sector with family vaccines. And now, this afternoon, welcome back to our regular programming. Welcome to Leaders for Excellence and Public Service, LEAP webinar series. This is our 8th module in partnership with San Miguel Corporation, and our topic for this module's webinar is the role of LGUs in the implementation of distance learning. As you can recall po, Mayors, last July 11, naging topic na natin ang distance learning, but that was before the opening of classes. So once again, dahil na-move na po this October ang resumption of classes, we will be discussing distance learning because in a span of a few months, marami na pong nagbago. But before we welcome our speaker, magkakaroon lang po tayo ng short sharing from one of our mayor fellows. So now, I would like to call on Mayor Matt Erwin Florido of General Luna, Quezon, who will be sharing kung anong kalagayan nila sa kanilang municipality, how they're coping with the new normal and distance learning, and what he hopes to hear from our speaker. So Mayor Matt, sa inyo na po ang virtual stage.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Winona. Muli po, ako po si Mayor Matt Florido ng Bayan ng General Luna, Quezon. I am a first-term mayor of a fourth-class municipality in Bundok Peninsula, Quezon Province. We are an IRA-dependent town with an estimate of 106 million income per annum. We have 27 barangays with around 30,000 population. We used to call our beloved town as Bayang May Puso. We are now on the 7th month in battling COVID-19 pandemic. As to our LG response, in these trying times, we were able to successfully implement numerous innovative programs to address the economic and social challenges brought about by COVID-19. Our various programs were recognized by the DILG Region 4A, DILG Calabarzon, and even the Freedom of Information Philippines. Isa pong karangalan na maging bahagi ako ngayong araw na ito ng LEAP webinar on distance learning at makasama dito ngayong araw sina Principal Joaquin Hagedorn of Sinergia at ang Lodi ng mga gurong Pilipino, si Yusek Diosdado San Antonio ng Department of Education. Siyempre, ganun din po sa aking mga LEAP family at sa Kaya Natin Foundation, kay Sir Harvey. Having been tasked to share our efforts and how we combat the challenges of today in the education sector, let me first give you a brief profile of our town when it comes to education sector. We have 14 public elementary schools, 1 integrated school, 2 public secondary schools, and 2 private high schools. We have 1 state university, the PUP General Luna Campus. We have a total of 155 elementary teachers and 68 secondary teachers. In less than a year, after I assumed the office, we were able to establish 1 integrated school and 1 additional public high school. Our annual Special Education Fund, or SEF, is only 1 million pesos for this year, 2020. Imagine niyo po, sa laki ng problema natin ngayon sa sektor ng edukasyon, ay ano ang mararating ng 1 milyon. Pero wala na po kaming magagawa dahil ito ang aming available resources sa ngayon. What I did ay kinonsulta po namin ang aming district supervisor, lahat ng mga school heads, and I gave them the blanket authority on how to utilize our limited resources. We prioritize the budget in the purchase of 2 duplicator machines, 2 copier machines, as well as 3 laptops and 19 printers. This already cost around 650,000 pesos, about two-thirds of our SEF. Fortunate are those highly urbanized cities with billions of resources. Every time nga na may nakikita ako sa internet, sa mga post na merong LGUs na namamanage nila na magbigay ng mga tablets sa lahat ng kanilang mga estudyante, napapasana all na lang po tayo. May isa din akong city na di ko lang po ma-remember na kinaya nilang mag-provide ng laptop sa lahat ng kanilang mga teachers. Again, ako bilang punong bayan, sabi ko na naman, sana all. So, isa pong nakikita ko sa maraming malalaking challenges sa education sector ngayon ay itong una, yung parents and guardians readiness to serve as instructional partners. I commend one of our school heads here in our town, si Sir Jaime Sara, ng San Isidro Elementary School, na kung saan they already conducted a school-based capacity training program for home learning facilitators. Given our limited resources, I called also our school heads to profile the family of our learners. Sino yung mga pamilyang walang-wala talaga sa buhay, yung kahit na tigpa 500 to 700 na cellphone ay wala. From there, pwede naming ma-priority sila na mabigyan ng assistance. Another issues and challenges na nakikita ko as a local chief executive ng isang maliit na bayan at isang fourth-class municipality is number one, how to sustain the printing expenses for the modules. Kasi sa level po namin mga LGUs, exhausted na po ang aming budget at ang aming pondo. Second is the accessibility to internet. Katulad naming maliit na bayan, siguro mas marami yung mga schools na talagang walang access to internet. On the modular mode of learning naman, how the students can be assessed. Paano ba natin masisiguro na talagang natututo yung ating mga bata? Natuto ba sila? O yung mga parents nila or guardians yung sumasagot ng kanilang mga module. So optimistic naman ako that the Department of Education will issue another circular regarding this kung paano natin ma-address yung assessment sa ating mga bata. And isa pa ay yung hiring ng ating mga para-teachers to augment the DepEd teaching force who will shoulder their honorarium. Is it the LGU? Is it the province? Or is it the national government? But lastly, since limited lang naman po yung oras na binigay sa atin, alam ko po sa dulo, magtatagumpay po tayo dahil iyan naman ang katangian ng bawat Pilipino. Matatag po tayo, mapapagod tayo, pero kailanman di tayo sumusuko. Masasaktan tayo, pero handang muling bumangon at ipagpatuloy ang ating laban. Maraming salamat po at magandang hapon sa inyong lahat.
Thank you so much po, Mayor Matt. Bigyan naman po natin si Mayor Matt ng virtual applause. Ayan. Thank you, Mayor Matt. Napasana all din po kami sa inyo. And mayors, this is something that we plan to do regularly in our future webinars. Of course, as fellows, gusto rin po naming marinig yung insights nyo and yung current situation in your own localities. So, we look forward to hearing more from you in our next webinars. Once again, thank you po, Mayor Matt. And now, I am going to introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is Mr. Joaquin Hagedorn. He is an educational mentor and facilitator at Synergia Foundation. He has also been an educational coordinator and a bilingual teacher at various programs and schools abroad, particularly in Napa, California. Mr. Hagedorn earned his master's degree in education administration at University of Rio Verde, Sacramento, California. Lastly, he strongly affirms that as principled educational teachers, each one of us can make a positive difference in the lives of our Filipino children. To speak on the topic, No Student Left Behind, a holistic approach to distance learning, let us all welcome Mr. Joaquin Hagedorn.
Good afternoon, everyone, again. First of all, I bring you greetings from Dr. Guevara, Ma'am Nene, and the entire Synergia family. So very, very excited to be here. And one thing that I wanted to add to Winona is I was born and raised here in the Philippines, and I went to elementary and high school here in the Philippines. Okay, so I think that that's important, very, very important for me in the way I was brought up. Um, Today, and if we can start with the first screen, the share. Our topic today is No Student Left Behind, a holistic approach to distance learning. Very, very important topic. I might want to add, Mayor Matt, you have probably the greatest resource that children need, and that is Mero Campuso. Okay, so I want to immediately recognize you for that. And for today's presentation, I'm going to focus on the three important parts of the title: No Student Left Behind, a holistic approach, and of course, distance learning. I'm going to try to limit my presentation to no more than 20 minutes. So this gives us a little bit more time for the forum, for the open forum, so that hopefully we can have more time to discuss and participate in this whole event. Is that okay with everyone? I don't hear an answer like I would ask my students. Okay, great. Okay, no student left behind. An extremely powerful vision statement. I believe that this is a guiding principle that we can all agree upon, and it's something that really unites us in common purpose. The challenge, and Mayor Matt already alluded to this, is certainly daunting. Recent reports indicate that over 3 million students have yet to enroll for the current school year. So we are truly faced with a very, very challenging set of conditions and circumstances. And so there are some essential questions that I pose to you. For me, it's very difficult to sometimes imagine, wow, 3 million children, Filipino children all across our nation na hindi papasok sa paralan itong taon. And what I've learned from my years of being a school principal, elementary school principal, is that I have to focus on my school, the environment that I have control in. And so the question that I have to the mayors is, what does this mean in your LGU? The new set of conditions, the school year is upon us. In a couple of weeks, October 4 is the start of the school year. And how many children right now in your own LGU are enrolled, and how many are not enrolled? Another very essential question that I think is important is, okay, so we get the children in school, but now we have to also ask, how are we going to address the needs of students with special needs? Well, clearly, with the lack of face-to-face, one-on-one guided instruction experience, these children are faced with even greater challenges. Personally, as a father, I know that because I have a daughter who is a child with special needs, very smart, but requires that constant supervision. The second, and I think Mayor Matt, you kind of alluded this, and I know in San Gabriel, you've been working on this, is how will we be addressing the needs of non-readers and frustrated readers? Kasi na yon, we're going to be very dependent on, di ba, yung mga modules. which requires students to be able to read. And without the teacher right there guiding, then this creates another level of challenges for the needs of the non-readers and frustrated readers. Then again, without data, all you have is an opinion. You know, when we would be asked by a superintendent when I was a principal, how is your school doing, Joaquin? How are the students? It was not acceptable for him to hear me just say, oh, they're all happy. They're really doing well. That's my opinion. I had to let him know what exactly does that mean. So going back to the question that you posed earlier, Mayor Matt, is paano natin malalaman kung talaga natututo yung mga bata? Okay? So we have to come up with both formal and what we call informal assessments. You know, and I'm sure that DepEd is working very, very hard to develop these. But the informal assessments are just as important, especially during this lack of face-to-face instruction. But there are also other ways to measure if no student has been left behind. In your own LGU, is there a 95% enrollment rate? That would be great. But let's not forget, what are we doing with that other 5%? They are real children. And so what are the steps that you are taking as a system to address the needs? Participation rate. In Synergia, we focus a lot on not just being in school, but finishing the school year. Okay? Two different numbers sometimes. Marami nag-umpisa, but for some reason, especially as we get to the higher grades, marami nagda-drop out. Totoo ba yan o hindi po? How is that situation in your LGU, Mayor from San Gabriel?
Meron pong may mga dropouts. The reason po is isa is lumilipat po sila ng mga dwellings nila. So
Okay.
very few, pero meron po konti.
Meron po, okay. And so there are many, many factors, and now especially with the pandemic,
Yeah.
you know, and the economic conditions that it has created, there's so much movement. People going back to the province, di ba? People without work, trying to figure out where they're going to live. So, you know, how do we really plan to make this really powerful vision? No Filipino student left behind. I might also add, let's not forget our parents. So the title here could very well be No Parent Left Behind, No Teacher Left Behind. These are basically, in my opinion, the three most important elements that we are faced with. And our parents are really, really faced with some challenges, you know. May mga solo parents, mga single parents. May mga parents na nagtatrabaho ng dalawa. Lola is taking care of the child. So how are the children doing is the bottom line, the question that we ask of ourselves each day. Okay, any comments or questions at this point? Please feel free to ask or to make a comment, okay? Mayor, Mayor Matt, may comment or tanong? If you have a comment, like I said, please feel free to raise your hand. I know that there's a button here that you can press, and then we'll stop and entertain your comment or question, okay? Thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, the next part of our title is holistic, the holistic approach. Can I get back to that? Thanks. Okay. Can we say it? Yes, can we say that? Okay. As you can see, I kind of misspelled the word correctly because I added the W. It's more of a whole approach to the way we're going to do things, especially this current school year. So a holistic approach consists of different methods of learning and teaching, reaching out to all of the stakeholders in our community. And I want to share with you Synergia's holistic approach action plan. Number one, Synergia believes very strongly in getting the local school boards engaged. That is a guiding principle of Synergia. And we've done several things to address the needs of students, parents, teachers, the stakeholders within the community. For the past few months, we've been conducting teacher training. I know that teachers from San Gabriel have participated in this training. This is a series of workshops where basically teachers get an opportunity to develop their own modules following DepEd standards and guidelines. But this has been really exciting. I have participated in several of this, and it's amazing how creative our teachers really are. We've also been emphasizing parent training, just like what you mentioned, Mayor Matt. You know, one of your principals already outreached, to the parents of his school. And one of the, I think, the exemplary programs of Synergia that it has been implementing for several years now is the Nanay Tatay program. And so we've been conducting, Synergia now has been conducting live, just like what we're doing, Facebook live streaming of parents from Marawi all the way up north to Cagayan. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Cagayan. And I was just informed by Nining Doble, one of the Synergia mentors, that in one setting, there were 9,500 participants in a live stream. Okay, this is all across Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. And the training has focused on just about every kind of parent that we have, that I know you have in your communities. We have OFWs, we have single parents, we have those parents who are both working and have to leave the child, with a lola, guardian. And so how are parents coping with this challenge? All parents want to help their children, but many parents don't know how, or they are just faced with the economic challenges that this makes it even more challenging. We also believe that during this time, it's not just about the academics, but also the health, the mental health, the emotional health, the physical health of the students, the parents, and of course, the teaching staff. So Synergia is also working in that area. We're also exploring what we can do for the arts and history. I know this year, the emphasis is on reading, language arts, math, diba? Science, and maybe good character curriculum. Also, and I would encourage all mayors to please go to this link, paralangbahai.synergia.org.ph. This is where the modules, the videos, the parent trainings the reading stories are deposited in. And so you have access to this as you see fit. The videos of training conducted and LGU presentations, please go to the Synergia Foundation Facebook. It is so rich with materials that are being developed, by together with schools and LGUs. We promote, of course, even during this time, love of reading through reading stories. And this is where I think parents and grandparents play an important role. You know, read to your child or have your child read to you and then talk about the story. I heard from a mayor, I think it might have been from San Gabriel, a mayor, that you were talking about an e-library. Did you mention about it? Yes, okay. I heard you mention that, where children can have access to like library books, correct? Okay, so see, there are ways to continue to expand the world of reading for children. We've also conducted a creative writing contest for teachers. We believe very strongly that when we encourage teachers to write, then of course they share their stories with their students. And then of course students are encouraged to write and be creative. And finally, Synergia recognizes that the LGUs cannot sometimes afford everything that needs to be spent. And so Synergia has taken upon printing and the distribution of learning modules for disadvantaged communities. And finally, Ma'am Nene, I think, shared this at the meeting of the Northern Luzon Council, that Synergia is also exploring developing informal assessment tools. This is not in place of what DepEd is doing, but I believe that this enhances, because you need to find out not at the end of a quarter or at the end of the school year, how are the children doing? How are those non-readers and frustrated readers coming along? What are the challenges that they face? So again, this incorporates most, if not all, of the major initiatives Synergia is doing as part of the holistic approach to the education of all students in the Philippines. Any questions or comments, please? Okay, next screen. I've learned how to do that. Distance learning. Okay. I post this concept to all of you. For me, I find that there's a big difference between distance learning and distant learning. Okay, so I'm gonna wait to see if anybody asks, Sir Joaquin, what's the difference? Because if I'm talking to myself, that I feel funny talking to myself. So why don't you ask me, Winona?
Sir Joaquin, what's the difference between distance and distant learning?
Thank you for asking that question. Okay, distant learning with a T. Distant learning can occur even when we are physically together in a classroom. And what do I mean by that? If there is no relationship building between the teacher and the student, or the teachers and the principal, or the community with the mayor, then there's distant teaching going on, distant governance going on. Okay? In distance learning, it is simply an inconvenience right now that we do not have this face-to-face contact between students and teachers. However, even though they are very important tools, Synergia does not rely on gadgets. They are extremely important. You need that Xerox copier to make to print copies of the modules, the lesson plans. Okay, you need the laptops for the teachers to develop their lesson plans and then to do their online PowerPoint presentations. So those are all extremely important. However, with Synergia, when it comes to this distance learning, we emphasize on the following: ongoing communication, okay? Especially now where there has to be much closer relationship between the student, the teacher, and of course the parents. More than ever, there has to be ongoing communication. Connecting, showing empathy. You know, we have to listen to our parents. Our non-readers were going to say, hindi ko kaya basahin yung textbook. Anong gagawin ko? I cannot pass the test. Okay? So we cannot simply say, well, you just have to try harder. We have to show that we care enough to teach differently. Kaya Natin, when I was reading your mission description of your organization, I was just so impressed. I read it more than once, okay? Because you really talk about building relationships and partnerships. Di ba 40 mayors kayo all across, is it just Luzon or Visayas also?
All over the country.
Okay, all over the country. So, kita mo, you're 40, you are separated by distance, okay? But you have developed over your 12 years relationships and partnerships with one another, okay? You've grown to trust by ongoing communication. And of course, we try to build trust with our parents and our teachers by following through on what we say we're going to do. In other words, you keep your word. We listen to the concerns and the feedback. For example, Ma'am Nene has heard very clearly that many of the parents, yung mga single parents, iba yung mga kailangan nila. And so now Synergia is going to be developing presentations geared for single parent families. Participatory, you know, everyone is involved. And I think part of good leadership, ethical leadership, like you talk about, and good governance, I'm sure that you involve, you know, all the stakeholders within your community. And finally, there's that continuous improvement. And these times, we really have to adapt to changing needs and conditions. Bigla na lang, walang COVID case. All of a sudden, 2 or 3, lockdown, quarantine. The needs can change so extreme from one day to the other, and we have to be able to adapt to that. And then the other part that I also felt very inspired by in reading your mission statement is you talk about empowerment as an organization, as LEAP, Kaya Natin, you talk about empowering. And this is exactly what, in spite of being physically distant, okay, it doesn't mean that we cannot continue to connect and build relationships and partnerships. Okay, any questions or comments, please? Okay, so my final, and I ask you to just indulge with me for a few more minutes. I would like to read to you like a short parable, a story that has guided me throughout my career as a school administrator and that I believe in very, very strongly. And maybe some of you have already heard this before, but I'd like to read it to you again. It is the story of the starfish. While walking along a beach somewhere in Palawan, a young man saw someone in the distance bending down, picking up something, and throwing it into the ocean. As he got closer, he noticed that the figure was that of an old man picking up starfish one by one and tossing each one gently back to the water. He came closer still and called out, "Good morning, po. May I ask, what is it that you are doing?" The old man paused, looked up, and replied, "Why, I'm throwing starfish into the ocean." The young man smiled and said, "I must ask you then, why are you throwing starfish into the ocean?" This, the old man replied, "You see, the sun is up and the tide is going out. If I don't throw them in, they will surely die." Upon hearing this, the young man commented, "Pero po, do you not realize that there are kilometers and kilometers of beach, and these starfish are along every kilometer? You can't possibly make a difference." The old man listened politely. Then he picked up another starfish, threw it into the ocean, passed the breaking waves, smiled, and said, "It made a difference to this one." As principled educational leaders and leaders in governance, I truly believe that each one of us can make a positive difference in the lives of our Filipino children. Thank you very much, and let's just go on to the next and final slide. So if I may ask all of you, including Wainona and Aika, kindly write down a specific suggestion you can make to improve my presentation. Okay, like I told you, without data, all I have is an opinion. And so I would really appreciate those comments. And if you could kindly email them to me at jhagedornsenior@gmail.com. And finally, kaya ba natin? Kaya natin? Naku, walang sagot. Kaya ba natin?
Kaya natin.
Kaya.
Kayang-kaya nyo. Okay, so maraming salamat. And right, like I said, I still have a little bit of time. And I really hope we can now engage just like we do in Synergia. It's always participatory. Okay, maraming salamat sa inyong lahat and for paying attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sir Joaquin, for that very lively and insightful discussion. At this point, we are opening na po for the forum. For our mayors who have questions, you may use the raise hand option or pwede po kayong mag-chat if medyo mahina ang connectivity.
See,
So,
if you don't raise your hand, I will call you.
may recitation po pala tayo. Okay, sige po. Habang pinag-iisipan niyo po yung mga questions, we have two questions here, Sir Joaquin,
Yes.
na sinend po sa atin prior this webinar. So for the first one po, does Synergia Foundation have any programs that we can avail for LGUs, especially on parents training and support system?
Absolutely. As you can see, part of my presentation, I shared with you all the different areas that Synergia is involved with as far as giving direct presentation and training, to our parents. And so I would really encourage you to contact Synergia, through their Facebook. And if you have a specific person, Winona, that is asking that question, I would appreciate you emailing me the name if that person doesn't mind. So then I can refer that person immediately to Dr. Manen and Dr. Guevara. Okay? But thank you for asking that important question.
So for our Mayor Fellows po who are interested in the programs of Synergia, you may contact me po and we will connect you with them.
Yes.
And for our second question po, for low-income municipalities, what are the best or most effective alternative resources or materials for distance learning?
Okay. What are the best alternative?
Alternative resources or materials for distance learning.
And who specifically asked this question?
It was sent po
Ah,
anonymously in our.
okay, okay. No problem, no problem. Okay. Besides what is being provided, which I think that they're really working hard and doing, I think, a very good job with the modules from the depth ed, the standards and everything. I would encourage parents, or in this case, maybe it's a mayor asking this question, to encourage the school site principals, okay, to research resources on the web that are extremely validated, well validated to help students. The first thing I would do is, what are the needs of our students that we are needing alternative learning materials? Okay, so if you know what your needs are, then you can match the learning resources. Again, I would encourage any of you mayors, please, and I think Mayor from San Gabriel, I forget your name, and I don't want to keep calling you Mayor from San Gabriel. What is your
Hermie.
name again, sir?
Hermie Velasco.
Mayor Velasco. Okay. Um, I'm of course I want to tell you that we are doing all these things through Synergia, and you can find many of these resources that we are developing. I think that could be extremely helpful. But I would also encourage you to ask Mayor Velasco because he has direct experience with Synergia. Okay, so he can tell you what Synergia has done, what you have done for Synergia, and what has been accomplished for the students. The other thing that I'm also curious with this question, of course, is we have different needs. Elementary students have different needs from the secondary students. Iba yung curriculum, hindi ba? So for example, in science for high school, how are you recreating yung science lab experience? Okay, so you cannot find all this in textbooks, but this is where the internet of teaching resources can be a very powerful tool. I hope I answered that question, satisfactorily.
Right. Thank you, Sir McQueen. Kanina po, Mayor Hermie is raising his hand. Would you
Hi,
like to
okay.
ask?
Mayor Hermie.
Okay. Good afternoon again po sa lahat, Sir
Yes.
Herbie and Sir Joaquin. Of course, I remember you coming here several years ago, but since that initial workshop that we have had before, there were so many good results that came by along the way with our partnership po. So for the information of most mayors here po na not within the Synergia circle, this Synergia Foundation particularly addresses the problem in basic education. By basing on an experience during the time when my wife was the mayor, that's 2013 exactly. That's the time that we partnered with Synergia. And the basic question that Ma'am Nina Guevara was asking, do you know how many children are considered under the frustrated, or do you know the cohort? So Ma'am Nina was asking so many data at the time, and my impression then was, for many mayors, education for them is, if they just give the fund for the education, that's it. But it was a what I would say is a tipping point for us that time, because when we were asked that question, we have no definite data, we have no definite idea how our educational sector is going on besides the funds that we were giving. So right after that education summit, then we came here to San Gabriel, and pronto we had a education summit done, and asked the basic questions that we learned from Synergia. And yung nga po, that brought the educational reform program, yung Project Hope. Project Hope po yung that's the educational reform program in San Gabriel. So in short, for the 7 years now that we are in partnership with Synergia, it has brought us so many realizations. Being the local chief executive, I know now more how to manage the funds that should be prioritized for the important things that should be funded by the education sector. Before, SEF, karamihan po doon na pinaglalagyan ng mga principals, pang-improve ng principal's office, mga ganun po. So where is the direct benefits of the children coming from this SEF? Like Mayor Matt kanina, I am also an era-dependent fourth-class municipality. Then po, we are an indigenous cultural community. So medyo challenging po yon. But with the help of Synergia po, talagang napakaganda po yung transformation po, not only the leaders, us being the enabler of these different programs, the teachers themselves and up to the parents, marami pong nagbago. Truly enough, yung sinabi ni Sir Joaquin, all those nanay, tatay teachers, all those workshops, we have undergone all those things. Yung local school board, as we know it, it's already expanded. We have captured a better understanding of what the education sector really needs, because not only the teachers po yung involved ngayon, the usual members po ng core members po ng local school board, we have expanded it to include all the principals so that we have a wider appreciation kung ano po yung problema ng iba't ibang schools. We have included po yung federation ng PTA, the federation, if you hear about that, SGC, the School Governing Council, which assists the PTA, and actually they partner and help the school to raise funds for the basic things that should be being given for these children. So the whole of all these things that we learned from Synergia, we have religiously implemented as much as we can in San Gabriel. And the bonus part is marami pong network ang Synergia, marami pong naitutulong sila dito in terms of the funding of our special projects, mga priority programs. Now, Sir Joaquin, here comes the question. We just had our...
Before you do, let me just say, I recorded everything you said. Papakita ko kay Ma'am Nene mamaya.
Sige sir, thank you. 2 days ago, last Thursday, we just had our regional education council because
yes.
alam po natin yan, yung USAID, so I think alam natin yung funding issue doon. So, and we are standing on our regional education council to continue whatever Synergia has started. And nakakatuwa po, sabi nga ninyo, for the past weeks, of course, with Ning and CapEd, sila po yung mga focal person namin dito sa North Luzon cluster. Napaka-active po nung mga right shop, workshop. May claimor pa nga po, the nanay teachers, the nanay tatay teachers is a very good experience for our parents because si Ma'am Ninemes mo ang nagpa-facilitate ng workshop through Zoom, and ngayon po usually my co-mayors here na listening, usually po ang education sa bahay, it usually falls down to the mother, but as our experience now is yung father mismo
Tama.
na rin sa education ng bata, and that's very important po.
Yes.
The children can feel, the children can see that their parents are interested in what they are studying. Na experience ko po dito, kahit naghihirap sila sa buhay, the fact na their parents are behind them, supporting them in whatever education they have right now, yung feeling ko, when these children grows up, they can always balik tanaw. Nandun yung value na ganon ka-importansyang binibigyan ng mga parents ko for our education, it is up to me to pursue the education that is being presented uh, in my one. Because we know po, the better education that we have, the higher opportunity that we will be having a good job in the future. And of course, better job, better pay, you have better and bigger potential to help your family para makahon po sa kwan sa kahirapan, no. So yung kwan mo, Sir Joaquin, no students left behind. You know, here in La Union, because of my experience sa Energia, I practically personally invite some of the mayors. Mayor, baka gusto mong magkwan dito. And ang iba, yun na nga po yung medyo, hindi naman frustration, pero different din po kasi yung priorities ng mga ibang mayors. I was hoping that they will see yung kwan dito because I understand sa Energia po, parang kuminsan by invitation, di ba? You invite the mayors and the mayors invite the district supervisor and so on. And if all of them embraces the synergia concepts, the frameworks and everything, that will be good advantage for them. So ang question ko po, being a principal in your area, what would you like us, mayors, na principal ka na kung sakaling medyo nafe-feel mo, sir, na parang hindi interested masyado si mayor sa education, it's enough for him na he delegates a representative during the local school board meeting or just for the funding. How do you deal with mga ganun po na the leaders supposedly being the enablers of any programs to become successful, medyo cool or parang hindi lang yun ang priority niya. So my question.
I will share from my personal experience, okay? Because that's very real, okay? Sometimes my experience was in California, okay? And all 28 years, nasa public school ako, and what they classify as high poverty, high minority schools. So these are very challenging conditions. And that's my choice, okay? So sometimes as a principal, okay, you don't always get the support of the, what I call higher ups, okay? And as long as they don't interfere directly as a principal with my teachers and my parents and my students, we can do a lot of things on our own, okay? However, when the superintendent, or in our case here in the Philippines, DepEd, and when the mayor, who also has influence over funds, the funds come through you, okay? When you are not just interested, but involved, then you can really begin to make a difference in the lives of children in real terms. So it's hard for me to accept, and this is not a criticism of any mayor, okay, please. But there's such a value to not, instead of sending a rep, to yourself showing up yourself, okay? Because you either inspire or you make people perspire sa nervousness, sa takot, okay? And I would rather inspire people. So I would really encourage mayors, and I know how difficult, especially now, talagang challenging. Yung sinabi ni Mayor, 1 million lang ang budget compared to, you know, nababasa ko dito sa, siyempre, Metro Manila, billions, okay? So there's a big gap. But in your case, you said, okay, we're a fourth-class municipality, but we have learned how to network. Now, a principal is also very challenged with the workloads. Pero pag nandun ang mayor, mas malaki yung network. Kasi yung mayor, you know, you're very influential, you know, more influential than that one principal. So I would really encourage you, mayors, to actively, physically be a part of what is happening in your schools. And many of you I know are doing just that. So I don't know, Mayor, sagot ba yung tanong mo?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for that important question. And that's why I strongly suggest to all the mayors within Kaya Natin, if you have my email, any questions that pop up after today, please feel free to contact me. If I don't know the answer, I'll find it out for you. Okay, or I can refer you, to the Synergia staff. Okay, pero I hope that this establishes ongoing communication between you, me, and Synergia. Salamat, Mayor, talaga, ha? Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Hermie and Sir Joaquin. For our next question, Mayor Jazz of Magallanes, Cavite would like to ask.
Hi, good afternoon, Sir Joaquin.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor Jazz.
Yes, my question is, with the pandemic, it seems there's a disorderly situation in the Department of Education. There is no concrete learning continuity plan. Well, I'm mostly talking about in my town, in our LGU. Um, as an educator and from a person from Synergia, what can you advise to us LCEs as to what to prioritize and how may we be able to maximize our limited budget?
You're asking me, the priority is always what do the children need? That's the number one priority. And then, of course, you have to break what does that mean? Elementary, junior high, di ba, at high school. Okay? And you have to involve not just the school heads, but the principals in making that assessment. And I think what's also very important here is you have to give them they have to know that it's okay for them to think and to come up with solutions. Because sometimes you cannot wait for the solution to come outside. It has to come from within. And so I always say, if we think about, ang dami talagang kailangan gawin. That just mind-blowing, di ba? But let's break that down into segments. Okay, when we talk about needs, ano yung needs ng mga elementary students? Ano yung needs ng mga teachers ng elementary students? Anong mga needs ng mga magulang ng itong mga estudyante? So then you begin to have an idea of what you have, of what you need. The other thing that I would suggest to you is to do what I call the 3-2-1 model. Okay, and this is very simple, and I share this with all the mayors. What are the three things? This is very practical, Mayor Jazz. What are the three things that we're doing really well right now during this pandemic? You're doing great things. I know that. Even though I have not been to your LGU, but I know you are doing. Second question is, what are two things that we're doing well, pero kailangan natin, we need to improve on it? So then you answer that question. And then the last one question is, what do we need to focus on for the next 6 weeks, for the next 30 days? Para ganun, magiging manageable yung mga needs nyo. And then you establish a priority, like what you're saying, what should we prioritize? Well, it's based on assessing what your needs are and then coming up with solutions and timeline. Hindi lang gagawin natin ito, pero within what period of time and who is responsible to make sure it gets done. So there's a whole process here. Okay?
But sir, sometimes like in San Gabriel, like the SEF, ang priority ng mga principals is hindi po para sa mga students. It's for the school. So, ang hirap din po as an LCE to to know what is really the important, what do we need to prioritize. Kung ang sinasabi po ng mga principals sa amin, ito ang kailangan, like before, kasi I have attended one education summit last year by Synergia. And after that, binago ko po yung LSB ko. So, ginawa ko po siyang extended LSB. So, I included all private institutions, private
Great.
learning
Oh,
institutions.
yes.
So, medyo na-delay lang po din yung mga pagpa-planning namin because of this pandemic. May mga projects na rin po kami, pero naiba nga po na disorder, parang naging chaos ngayon dahil iba na naman ang dapat i-priority kasi katulad po ng mga modulars, reso machines. So, right now, ang sinasabi po ng mga principals is kailangan nila mostly is the reso and the laptops. Pero sa tingin ko naman po, hindi po kailangang ibuhos lahat sa reso kasi we need other stuff other than reso machines.
Yes.
And sa tingin ko po, hindi rin naman po forever tong pandemic. So, after that, what are we going to do with the reso machines after, di ba po, after this pandemic?
Okay. Well, then, since now you're asking what I call the essential question, okay? If I come to you as a principal and say to you, Mayor, kailangan ko talaga ng 10 laptop. The question is, how will having 10 laptops ensure that no child is left behind? Sagutin mo yan first. What is the relationship between what you're asking and what does it mean for no student left behind? Pag walang impact or you cannot define how it will help the student, then it's like a toy. I want to have a toy, mommy. Even though there's no value to it or not, because everybody's having it now, di ba, na-advertise. And so you're asking the critical questions, Mayor. Anong mangyayari dyan sa reso machine pagkatapos ng pandemya? Okay, what can we do in place of a reso machine? And that's why I stated earlier, machines, laptops, reso, they are important. We need them. I mean, look at right now, nag-zoom tayo, di ba?
Yeah.
Gadget yan. But that is not what is essential during these difficult times. Okay, I strongly, I believe that very strongly. And so my question always is ano yung ginagawa mo that's related to the mission of the school, to the vision? If it's not related, then there's a disconnect. And if there's a disconnect, usually it's because the child is the least impacted by whatever you want to do. So the child, that's why you always ask, how are the children doing? Not how is the principal doing or how is the teacher doing? How are the children doing? Okay? Or they're doing okay. Anong ibig sabihin you're doing okay? Kasi kung tatanong ko yung isang group dito na mga frustrated readers, iba yung sasagot sa akin eh. Sir, nahihirapan kami. Hindi kami maaaring magbasa. Kailangan natin ng tulong. Okay? That's how the children are doing. They need help. What are we doing to help them for that? Okay? So, and then you as a mayor, naku, with you saying, wait a minute, you better prove to me na yung tinatanong mo is really important for the no student left behind. And if not, then, that's not our most important priority. Importante yan, pero hindi yan ang pinakama-importante sa kailangan gawin. Okay, so I don't know if that, without getting to, well, let's just leave it at that. That's a very honest answer on my part.
Thank you, sir.
I would, yeah. So I hope I answered that question, Mayor Jeff.
Yeah.
Are you? Have you done work with Synergia before?
Yeah, I have attended an education summit last year.
Okay.
Pero nga po, my follow-up question will be, how can we tap Synergia programs, and how are we going to be a partner someday?
Ma'am Nene, usually waits for a mayor to make that request. Okay? And so that's why I've referred for everybody. Nandyan yung Facebook, you have my email. You can just write me a note, which I will then pass on to Ma'am Nene. I mean, believe me, I will tell her when I speak to her, if not today, by tomorrow. Now, here's a mayor who expressed interest, wants to know more. Can we get back to you? Okay, so that follow through will happen for sure. I can assure you of that.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, po.
Thank you, Mayor Jazz. And since nandito na po yung next speaker natin, si Yusek Dads. Hello po, Yusek Dads. We are going to entertain one last question from a mayor. Anybody po would like to ask? Mayor Joseph.
Magandang hapon po, Mr. Joaquin.
Hi, good afternoon po.
Ako po ay mayor sa Labo, Camarines Norte. Ang amin pong bayan ay malaki when it comes to land area. So masyado pong malalayo yung aming mga estudyante. So my question is, during the time po, kasi nang wala pang pandemic na face-to-face ang teaching natin, yung quality ng education na nakukuha ng mga bata ay hindi pa rin talaga, it is really below par. Below par. Ngayon po, wala na tayo, hindi na tayo modular ng klase ng teaching natin. How can we assess kung ito po ba effective? Maybe yung ginawa natin mga modules, pagdating sa bahay, tatapon lang nila, gagawin lang nilang panggatong or whatever. How can we assess na talaga kung magiging effective or efficient para ito mo naman ay matuto talaga yung mga bata? We are spending para sa risograph, sa mga printers, sa mga papel, and yet baka naman hindi ito magamit. Yeah, we are just wasting money. Paano po natin kaya ma-assess ito para in such a way na talagang makarating to sa mga bata at matuto sila?
Okay. I would go school by school, Mayor. Okay? Ibig sabihin ko dyan, that a school has to come up for you. Okay? In other words, you tell the principal, kailangan, okay, itong gagawin namin para sa inyo. We're going to provide modules, but now we need to know if the modules are being used or not. Unang-una. I don't know the answer to that question, but I know the question you have to ask. That you have to have a plan, a way to assess for each school. Okay? Kasi kung sasabihin mo ng lahat ganun, it's not really breaking down the problem. Because some school might be doing really well compared to another school. Now, walang monitoring system. Ay, bigyan na lang natin lahat. Pero walang checking, walang follow-through. So, you have to have a plan to measure kung ang ginawa nyo effective or not, whatever that might be. And in this case, very critical yung sinabi mo, Mayor. Paano natin alam kung talagang ginagamit ng mga modules? Okay? Is there a system of collection by the end of the week? Does the child have to turn in the work? Is somebody in charge of collecting that work, correct the work, and then you can begin to evaluate, 75% ng mga estudyante in this school are really doing their work. But here in this school B, naku, 10% lang. So may problema dito sa school B, di ba? So kailangan natin gawin iba. So you have to have a system of monitoring, evaluating, and then collecting what I call yung evidence, yung data mo. Because then, based on that data, you will make new decisions. Well, why are we going to keep spending money running materials? Mahal itong Griso machine, mahal yung ink. Hindi natin alam kung nakikita namin lang, parang basura lang sa daan. Di ba? So we better stop doing that because that's not working. We better figure out another way. And then you said something that's extremely important, Mayor. You said before the pandemic, mataas na siguro yung frustrated non-reader levels dyan sa inyo. So may
Meron
data
pong
kayo. Ah?
meron po kuminsan mga nakaka-graduate ng elementary and yet they don't know how to read and write.
Yes, yeah, and you know we come across all that, you know, and there are programs that Synergia and mayors who have experienced. Mayor Rex from San Gabriel, meron kaming program that is talagang targeting yung mga non-readers, yung mga frustrated readers. At hindi dito ginagamit lang yung textbook. Kasi yung textbook, ibang level yun eh. Kung grade 3 ako, grade 1 ang reading level ko, paano kung babasahin ko yung textbook ng grade 3? You know? And like I told you before, you know, I have a daughter who's special needs. So for me, she has to learn how to read. It's more important that she has to complete the textbook. Okay? So if you already have this reality, then you already know that during this pandemic na walang face-to-face, okay, those children are at greater risk. Okay? And I'm not asking you to answer the question, but I'm asking that you bring your people together to answer that essential question. Ano ang gagawin namin dito para sa mga estudyante na frustrated or non-reader? At ayoko lang yung, we will teach them better, we will give them more assignments. No, that's general. Kailangan specific. Okay, kailangan may specific activities, step 1, step 2, step 3. So in other words, I hear your concern, Mayor, kasi I think this is all over. And you're really pointing out, I think for all the mayors, this is where, that's why this question that I asked in my presentation, how are the children doing? Okay, yan ang talagang para sa akin ang pinaka-importanteng tanong na araw-araw during this pandemic.
Kung meron pong programs ang Synergia to address this sa mga non-readers, I'm more than willing to ako na mag-tap sa Synergia,
Okay,
so
sir.
they can help us. And malaki pong percentage ng aming mga kabataan ang talagang cannot read and write, although they are going to schools.
Okay, the mayor, I have a big request of you, please. Nandiyan na yung email ko, okay? Please just drop me a short line. I'm very interested in knowing more and networking with Synergia. Ganun lang. And I will forward your request to Ma'am Nene and Synergia. For sure yan po. Okay?
Maraming salamat po. Maraming salamat.
Meron tayong maaaring gagawin para itong mga bata natin. Okay? I can assure you of that. At salamat po sa tanong mo, sir.
Maraming salamat po.
Kaya mo.
Kayang-kaya.
Good. Talaga.
Thank you very much po, Mayor Joseph. And thank you, Sir Joaquin. That was very reassuring. I'm sure marami pong gusto makipag-partner with you in Synergia. And on that note, I would like to request for all of our mayors to turn on their video para makapag-photo op po tayo with Sir Joaquin.
Maraming salamat, Winona. And like I said, please email me how I can improve in my presentation. That's very important data. Okay? Thank you so much sa lahat from everybody. And please stay safe and God bless.
Okay po. Picture po tayo. Ready?
Picture.
3, 2, 1. Okay po. Thank you so much po, Sir Joaquin. We will get in touch with you. And thank you din po to all our mayors who joined the discussion.
Thank you very much.
Sir Joaquin, if you have extra free time po, you're very much welcome to listen in our discussion. We will be having Music Dads next po. Thank you po once again.
Thank you.
All right. And now po, we move on to our next speaker. Kung matatandaan niyo po, in-invite din natin siya last July, and we are very honored to have him again here with us. So our next speaker is Yusek San Antonio. He is presently the Philippine Department of Education Undersecretary for Curriculum and Instruction. He has been tasked to coordinate the ongoing review of the K-12 curriculum in our country. USEC also holds a research PhD in education from the University of Newcastle, Australia. He has been a recipient of various scholarships for his education both here and abroad, and has several published articles. He pushes for transparency, ethics, and accountability in school governance. To discuss proactive preparation for distance learning, please welcome Undersecretary Diosdado San Antonio. Yusek Dads.
Maraming salamat, Ms. Wainona. Good afternoon po, fellow public servants. This is really a privilege being able to have time with you. We've been saying, and we really believe that whatever we do in the Department of Education is, of course, significantly influenced by the dynamism of the political leaders in the communities we serve. Pwede pong mag-share ako ng PowerPoint. I'm using one that has been actually prepared by USEC NEPO with some revisions. Our readiness components has 9 aspects: enrollment, curriculum, learning delivery modalities, learning resources, assessment, teacher training, resource mobilization, health standards, and teachers and personnel welfare, and finally, regional contextualization. DepEd is working 24/7. We don't have to advertise that we even have meetings late at night so that we can really get ready for the school opening this coming October 5. In terms of enrollment, as of yesterday, we have like 88.25% of our expected enrollment if we compare it from last school year's figures. 24.5 million for public schools. We're almost 100%, 99.01%, 22.3 million out of the 22.5 or 6 million last year. And for our alternative learning system, we're still like more than halfway, 51.89% with 383,000. And for the private schools, we have almost 50%, 42.1 million out of the 4 million last year, more than 4 million last year. In terms of the modules that we are preparing, we know that this is the primary choice of the parents and children. We have printed, according to the reports from the regional offices, 739 million plus printed, and 730 million of this are ready for distribution. So we claim that 98.83% of those that we have printed for the first quarter are ready for distribution. In fact, I know that in some areas the distribution is going on as we speak. So these are the details in terms of the reports that were submitted to us from 25,602 schools and from the different regions, and the schedule of the dates that they intend to distribute, or the dates that are supposed to be done. We have no update yet from BARM, and Region 1 has also a need for more updating. We're also going to deliver, as most of you perhaps are aware, not only the printed modules, but we will use TV and radio as an option for the learners to learn from us. We will be using the DepEd Commons as well, which is the platform for us to share the learning resources on digital formats. please be informed that Globe and Smart have waived their data charges if a child or a mother or a father is going to access DepEd Commons. In terms of the school-based feeding program, we will change the approach. So we will not just go for wasted and severely wasted, but we will do the feeding for incoming kindergarten learners and the grades 1 to 6 learners who were wasted and severely wasted based on the report last year, except those that have already moved to grade 7. And essentially, I think some of you are aware that we are very excited to actually collaborate with local governments in implementing the school-based feeding program. We would love to see a centralized kitchen being organized in certain areas. And we are aware there are areas that are doing this now. So it's no longer be school-based administration because the kids would not be in school. It would be delivery to household. We adjusted the feeding days and possible provision of hot meals as a modality may be subject of a supplemental guidelines. So that tipo 120 days ang feeding program natin because of the changes in the school calendar. We will do the 60 days for the regular component and and division the training opportunity in terms of training on distance learning. They have reported to us the training of 620,794 as of the day this was prepared. I think this was last Monday, and then more than 7 million parents trained for distance learning delivery modality. We understand and we believe that the provision of distance learning and that the performance of our new roles will have to really be backed up by capacity building, not only for our fellow teachers and school officials, but also for the parents who will be performing new roles during this time. We also, of course, issued our guidelines on the required health standards in basic education offices and schools because the general health and safety protocols have to be there. So in order for us to increase physical and mental resilience, reduce transmission, reduce contact, and reduce duration of infection. Testing protocols including early detection, referral process, testing and quarantine, contact tracing, and support protocols for COVID-19 positive learners, teachers, and personnel have been clarified in that DepEd issuance. And there is a support mechanism for the DepEd required health standards. In our field offices, they would conduct disinfection of learning materials prior to packaging and distribution. They will be forging partnerships, stronger partnerships with all the barangay councils and local officials who will help in facilitating the distribution and retrieval of modules to their respective barangays. We issued the regional memoranda on strength and management in response to COVID-19. We implement alternative work arrangements in all levels of governance from the central office to the schools. We formulated the contingency plan for COVID-19 pandemic, and we have included COVID-19 protocols and other health-related reminders in our learners package kits. The funding requirements for teachers' welfare include the annual medical exams. We intend to release 500 per teacher with a budget of 400 million. We have a World Teachers Day incentive of 1,000 per teacher, hopefully to be distributed by October 2020 with 900 million allocation. Field health assistance, COVID-19 benefit packages include community isolation package, testing package, inpatient care, and all this. And we also have access to Employees Compensation Commission and the hazard pay under AO26. For our fellow teachers and school officials performing tasks in areas where there is declared ECQ or MECQ, they're entitled to 500 per day per person hazard pay. We have been conducting dry runs because we really want to see how the intended distance learning delivery modalities would be implemented. And as of September 13, 30,780 schools nationwide have conducted their respective dry runs. And between September 13 up to October 5, we expect 12,800 more schools to be doing the simulations or dry runs. And 605.7 million is, of course, this refers to the budget that we have. I don't think this is very relevant for our discussions today, but this is just to assure you that we are now in the process of defending our budget to ensure that the learning continuity plan created by the Department of Education will be fully funded. That's the presentation I have prepared for you today. And I think it would be better if we already proceed with the open forum. I can perhaps give my comments on the question of Mayor Jasmine about the impression that we don't have a learning continuity plan. Let me emphasize that as early as like the last week of March, the Secretary has convened a multi-sectoral forum to prepare the learning continuity plan. Mayroon po tayo, it's issued officially under DepEd Order number 12, series of 2020. Ang naiintindihan ko po, because I've been a teacher myself, I've been a principal, I serve as a superintendent in Ligao City. I understand Mayor Patty is with us. Hindi kami nagpag-aabot yata ni Mayor Patty. Hindi pa siya pinapanganak ng SDS ako doon. So I know how challenging it is in DepEd na nandun yung mga policies. Pero po, yung overexcited field officials namin usually would not be aware of the specific provisions of the policies. I would like to be very honest that even as I sit now as a member of the executive committee, I acknowledge that that is our biggest challenge. How do we make sure that the policies we issue are interpreted consistently and properly by our field officials? So there is a learning continuity plan that is very clear, that has identified the different learning delivery modalities online. So when we talk about distance learning, it's not just being able to do it online. There's the digital offline format for those without access to the internet, the printed modules, which is intended for 59% of the learners according to our own surveys. And then we'll use TV and radio. All of this will anchor their lessons on the self-learning modules that we have developed using the Bayanihan spirit within the Department of Education. And they will be converted into various formats. And the first thing that we did, my group, because we are in charge of curriculum and instruction, was to identify the most essential learning competencies. I reduced it to 40% of the previous 15,000 something list of learning competencies we expected the public schools to deliver, with just 5,000 something this year. And this does not mean that we have reduced the things that the children will learn. We are now paying attention to the most important ones. I understand even the question earlier by another participant about prioritizing. So the Department of Education, the first step in prioritizing was to identify the learning competencies that we should provide and develop among the learners during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we feel that it does not have to be like, we should not worry that it has been reduced. We should be glad that we have addressed the long established criticism about DepEd having very congested curriculum. So we have reduced it to the barest. When I was regional director in Calabarzon, because I knew I could not change the learning competencies, I had this initiative where I said, while there are 15,000, can we identify 400 that every child in our region should be able to know and perform and do? So yung para wala nang issue yung narinig ko sa mayor natin, kababayan ko from Camarines Norte, I'm from Bicol, for those who are not aware, na napupunta sa grade 7, hindi pa marunong magbasa. So when I got recruited as Undersecretary for Curriculum and Instruction, the first initiative that I requested the Secretary to sign is ang tawag po namin, Hamon Bawat Bata Bumabasa. I really feel na kung wala na tayong ibang gagawin, kahit ngayong COVID-19 pandemic, turuan na natin ang mga bata na magbasa. Kasi the moment they know how to read, they will be ready to learn in their lifetime. Yung tinatawag nating lifelong learners, makakamtan po natin yan. So this is still the challenge, although COVID-19 has come, medyo mas mahirap ngayon, but I know and I'm so proud to know that many of our fellow school leaders in the field are very creative, very passionate about their work of ensuring that children will continue to learn. Yun na lang po muna, and I'm ready for questions.
Alright. Thank you so much po, Yusek Dats. I'm sure a lot of our mayors have many concerns and your presence and expertise would be very helpful to them. So before po natin tawagin yung mga mayors na magtatanong, babasahin ko po muna yung tatlong questions that we have here. So first po, Yusek Dads, aside from the training, are there any plans to subsidize laptops, internet connection, and other learning materials for public school teachers?
May I, medyo not so clear. May I have the question again, Ms. Wainona?
Okay po. Aside from the training, are there any plans to subsidize laptops, internet connection, and other learning materials for public school teachers?
Teachers. It's for teachers. Okay. We have an ongoing DepEd computerization program. So this is not new. I understand it's not within my strand, but I've heard our USEC share in our meetings that there would be a continuous procurement of the computer packages, and primarily we also adjusted the policies that these are supposed to be in school, but because we allow work from home arrangements, we have modified the guidelines. The schools may lend the units that are already there, so that the teachers can use them at home. The other thing is the procurement will continue. We cannot yet provide for all, but it's going to be on a rolling basis. So every year there would be certain list of beneficiaries among the schools until we are done in delivering this to every school across the country. On top of that, in terms of yung internet allowance, we are of course excited with the plans of our legislators to make this part of the General Appropriations Act for next year, because the version of the National Expenditure Program does not have this. Although we have also modified the guidelines for the use of the MOOE that allows the schools to pay like the actual expenses of teachers for internet.
All right, thank you po, Yusek Dads. And for our second question, can you tell us more about the dynamics on TV radio-based instruction in terms of attendance, exams, and the like?
Okay, we hope that the TV and radio-based instruction, while it can be a standalone distance learning delivery modality, and if a child or if the school decides to use that, the teachers will have to prepare the activity sheets, and yes, the activity sheets for the kids, so that they can have something to do after viewing the lessons on TV or listening to radio programs. Let me also mention that this will not be for all learning areas. We have like very limited time slots. I think at most we'll have 3 or 2 full programs. So we hope to be able to initially develop, according to our ICT team, about 130 shows from K to 12. And what we did was to identify certain learning areas that would benefit most from the the use of TV and video. So it's not going to be for all learning areas. What's going to happen, ang nakita kong programming grid will be the early part of the day would be for the younger learners, and then towards the afternoon we'll have the older learners. But if we can engage more like TV channels, we can even reverse this so that the children will be able to do the watching of their lessons on TV or listening to lessons on radio at their preferred time. And there would also be some learning areas that will be rerun, like morning that is shown, and then some other part of the day they would have the chance to have this shown. And then the local school executives have also made arrangements with their own areas. So we'll be hopefully, while the central office will attempt to prepare, to produce the lessons that we have already identified as lessons that will be made available for the learners, some regions or division offices may also opt to come up with their own adjusted programming, because again, the good feature of, I mean, one thing I love with the way Secretary Liling has inspired us to proceed with the learning continuity plan was it was developed in very consultative ways, and then she declared the operationalization, the contextualization has to be done in the schools. I will not allow a one size fits all approach to delivering distance learning. And of course, this is also consistent with my own leadership and educational management philosophy, that just like what Senior Hia has been like pushing for, the more we empower the field units, the schools particularly, collaborating with their local government leaders, the better it is for the Department of Education, because we are a huge system of more than 47,000 schools, and it will be a nightmare trying to make them behave in a uniform way. So we feel, and I think that's one, although there are sectors that do not agree with us, but I fully believe that the more we are able to empower our school leaders, the schools themselves, the better it is. And if you notice, even the issuance that I have signed with regards to the implementation of distance learning delivery modalities, they are mere suggestions. I don't claim to be the only one who knows how to do these things very well. I always recognize the wisdom of the people on the ground. Of course, I've been a ground official myself, and there were moments. It's even very funny that before, when I was a superintendent or a regional director, I would tell my team, ignore the central office. Sometimes they do not know what they want us to do. So let's proceed, and we will just explain if they will find out that we have not waited for their instruction for us to do this. So now I'm here. There is a reversal of roles, but many of my teammates who know me would always say, napaka-konsentidor niyan ni Dads. So, yun po ang mga exciting sa DepEd, and I'm so glad the Secretary thinks the same way. So it's not very difficult for me to just say, wag nang maraming prescriptions. We will just provide suggestions so that people who need guidance will be guided accordingly. But I promise you po, as long as I'm there, I will refuse a lot of prescriptions that the bureaus would want to issue. Kasi I really did not enjoy that when I was a field official.
Alright, thank you very much po, Yusek Dads, for reassuring us and our mayors. Ngayon po may mga nag-raise hand na, pero kanina po nauna si Mayor Joseph. So we'll go with Mayor Joseph, Mayor Hermie, and then Mayor Toyats next.
Magandang hapon po, Yusek Dads. I'm glad to know that you're from Camarines Norte. Saan po kayong bayan?
Kamsur po ako, Mayor.
Kamsur. Okay. Sige po. So anyway, the reason why I raised my hand is purely because ang problema natin sa DepEd, ready na ngayon ang mga teachers, nakapag-prepare na sila lahat and everything. And how can we reach the students? Yun talaga ang problema. Di ba, bakit hindi po natin, this is just a suggestion, this is just a product of my fertile mind, na bakit hindi natin persahin ang ating mga television network na sa umaga, sa hapon at sa gabi, mag-provide sila ng isang oras para lang maipakita yung mga learning modules na gustong gawin ng DepEd, hindi ba? Kasi wide range ang audience ng instead of having TV shows na talaga namang mga lalaswa na magugulo na walang naitutulong sa mga kabataan, we might as well do it. Kung yun ng presidente ng Pilipinas natin ay pasara yung ABS-CBN, kung hindi papayag yung mga TV network, persahin din natin, sabihin natin, isasara natin yan. Basta importante kung palabas kayo ng show ng ating maybe this is an observation na talagang out of this world, but why not, hindi ba? Subukan natin na yung ating mga teaching modules ay palabas natin sa television. Persahin natin yung yung mga television networks na ipalabas nila ito. Otherwise, isasara namin kayo. Or maybe we can talk to them. And this is the time of pandemic and maybe they are more than willing to help. Maybe hindi pa ito ina-approach ng Department of Education. And maybe this is a possibility that they will give us airtime for the Department of Education. What can you say, Yusek, that?
Mayor Joseph, salamat po. That's really a very, an idea that will absolutely support us in making the lessons more accessible to the children. Pero po kami naman, siyempre may mga lawyers din yung DepEd, inaral din yung batas. Sinabi, yes, there are mandates for certain like broadcast stations to allocate a certain number of hours for child-friendly programs, but it's not necessarily for lesson. So yun po yung mga issue. Pero ang isa pong maganda ay ongoing yung mga discussions. Medyo, alam nyo naman sa bureaucracy, it takes time even if we do partnerships. We have pending discussions with several stations, some of them digital format. And I think, I don't know kung napuntahan na po kayo ni Governor and Mayor now. Yung may initiative si sorry. Basta po may mga initiative na iba-iba. And we, as I've said, anything that will allow us to be able to make the lessons more accessible to the children, we will welcome. Pero yung pong issue na pupersahin, medyo baka kung DepEd lang po ang gagawa ay hindi. But absolutely
Uso na po ang
yung
persahan
government
ngayon.
channels.
Uso na po ang persahan ngayon. Kaya ng presidente yun.
Yung pong government channels definitely dedicated sa atin. Tutulong po sa atin yung government channels.
Konti lang po ang nanonood doon sa government channel. Dapat yung mga commercial channels ng mga TV network.
Dapat po panoorin na natin sila para dumami naman yung nanonood sa kanila.
Kasi po tingin ko ang module, ang TV, ang television ay talagang napakagandang pamamaraan para maturuan natin ang mga kabataan.
Yes po. Kaya po kasama po siya sa component ng ating distance learning delivery modalities na inihain.
Sana po another thing is, sana wag lang i-cancel ang opening ng classes sa October. Kasi matagal nang hindi naman ito. Virtual naman, di ba? Yung modular naman matter of teaching. So why do you have to cancel the opening of the classes? Because yung ating hindi pa naplaplatin ang curve. So, kung recommendation siguro, maybe Yusek Dads can make a recommendation. You talk to the Secretary of DepEd and then tell her na wag na po natin i-cancel kasi sobrang na ang pagod ng mga teachers, sobrang na pagod ng mga SDS, ng PSDS, sobrang na pagod nila. And they spend a lot of money already for this opening. Pag kinansela naman po ito, we just waste of time and money.
Tama po kayo, Mayor. Ang saya-saya ko po ngayon because we have found someone who stand with us against the so-called academic freeze movement. Kasi talaga po kami naniniwala din na yung issue, magkaka-infection, ay hindi naman natin papupuntahin sa school. So lahat naman po natin na-address na. Yung sinasabi po ni Secretary, kung aantay ka na yung handang-handa ka na, by the time na imumove mo yan, hindi ka na naman handa kasi may mga bago na naman yung mga hamon at challenges. So ako po, personally, I really believe that the Department of Education is absolutely prepared. We have been we've proven ourselves to be very resilient. Alam po natin yan. Kahit tayo sa Bicol, maraming bagyo, pero nakakapagpatuloy yung pagtuturo using modules dati. Maliliit lang yan. O kung ano-ano pa. So, yeah, there's no reason for
Wala
us
akong dahilan.
to...
Walang dahilan.
Opo.
Walang
So, I
dahilan
agree
para
with you, Mayor
Joseph.
Joseph. Magkaisa po tayo dyan. At assure ko po sa inyo, si Secretary, very serious in pushing for an October 5 opening. At palagay ko po na ipapaliwanag naman ng maayos ng Secretary sa mga sector na gustong. Parang wala naman ng marami. Parang it's no longer as like loud as the August 24 opening. Parang yung iba po ay nung na-move sa October 5 ay nanahimik na. Ang tingin ko po, yung dating mga maiingay, ayaw sa school opening ng August 24 nung na-move sa October 5 ay parang supportive na rin ngayon sa atin. So, very confident po ako na manalangin po tayo na wala ng pagbabago ulit.
Opo.
Thank you, Mayor Joseph. Up next po, Mayor Hermie.
Good afternoon po, Yusek. Last July po, nung nag-usap po tayo, ako po yung nagsabing interested for radio-based instruction, yung magkaroon po ng CBRS, Community-Based Radio Station. And nagpapasalamat po ako sa inyo at sabi nga niya po, tutulong po kayo sa akin. So I wrote actually NTC regarding po my interest in doing so because ang hirap po nga talaga dito sa amin, bundok-bundok. Mahirap lang yung mga anak namin dito, hindi naman kayang bumili ng mga gadgets and worse po yung signal po ng connectivity sa mga bundok namin talagang unstable or absent po. So we were opting talaga po dun sa radio-based instruction. Pero ito po sir, galing po ng NTC, ang reply po sa akin ng NTC because I was asking po sana for an AM band for our particular municipality para doon po sana kami magkaroon ng radio-based instruction. But sabi ng NTC po na wala pong available na ban and nirefer po ako doon sa memorandum po with DepEd na instructing mga cable TV stations, mga radio stations to give free time to DepEd for itong mga distance learning. So again sir, babalik po ako ngayon dahil kahit meron po tayong mga itong sinasabi nating mga online kwan na ganun po rin pa rin yung problema sa amin sa bundok po is talagang mahirap yung kwan po. Ang mabuti po ngayon may mga nagbibisita ang mga service provider na sinasabi nila na dahil it's a pressure coming from our national leadership na talagang i-fast track po ang connectivity lalo po sa aming mga remote mountainous area dahil po actually dito sa CLP ng DepEd para yung mga bata po walang maiwan na sinasabi. Ang hingin ko lang sana, Yusek, ito po, kung nakikita dyan sa kwan ninyo, may nakilala po kasi ako, dyan po sa Palawan, kilala ni Sir Hagidorn, yung kwan po, yung parang radio-based na certain area lang. Ang sabi ko nga lang pong problema po dito, this is the thing na hindi po yata, I need to have the parang kahit permission man lang sa NTC na I could set this up na doon sa isang barangay namin with a radius of 4 to 5 kilometers. Marami na pong mga bata na gamit-gamit lang po ang transistor radio, pwede na pong makinig sana. This is our way of parang substitution po ng online learning dahil nga po unstable ang connectivity namin dito, mahal ang mga gadgets and mga reasons po ganun. So I'm really working po dito sa kwan. Pati yung mga teachers po namin, we have our local school board last meeting Thursday, nagbigay na rin po sila nitong matrix po kung how we will run the radio hours to ma-schedule po ng mga bata from grade 1 hanggang K-12 po. So naka-ready sana kayo. So I hope I can get po yung kahit man lang endorsement from our Department of Education na to allow us po dito, kahit dito po lang sa lugar ko muna, na we could set up this one without impinging on some legalities.
May I share my number po? Text niyo po ako para makonect ko kayo sa focal person namin. 09, sulat niyo po.
Sige sir.
0917
yes, sir.
6 27 1163. Pwede rin po yung ibang if you wish to get my number. Okay lang po, basta you identify yourself when you text me.
Okay, Yusek.
0917-627-1163.
Okay, Yusek. Salamat po. I will tawag po. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you po, Mayor Hermie. Next po, Mayor Doyats.
Yes, magandang hapon po, Yusek San Antonio at saka kay Mr. Hagidorn. At
Yes po.
sa lahat po ng mga mayors, lalo-lalo na sa KN. Nito pong mga nakaraang buwan, isa pong tinututukan ng aming bayan, ito pong distance learning. Kasi nakikita po natin talaga, katulad ng ipresenta ng ating principal, Mr. Hagidorn, malaking problema yung mahirap magbasa at saka hindi nakakaintinding magbasa. So parati po akong nag-attend sa lahat ng activities ng schools, pati po yung presentation ng continuity learning program, yung simulation. At nakita ko rin na medyo may konting pagkakamali sa simulation. So nagbigay tayo ng suggestion. Kasi yung mga nanay, karamihan po, o mga tatay, hindi nila alam, mas mataas na yung napag-aralan ng kanilang mga anak kaysa sa nila. So ang nakita ko doon sa simulation, nahirapan yung mga magulang na kunin yung mga modules dahil magkakahiwa-hiwalay. So isa pong tinutukan natin yung pagsama-samahin na po yung mga modules, ilagay na sa isang lagayan at yun na mismo yung kukunin ng mga magulang. Isa po rin tinutukan ng local government unit namin, yung magdi-distribute ng mga modules ay aakuin na ng Federation ng Sangguniang Kabataan. Pati po yung re-retrieve nito at saka pagdala doon sa mga naitalang area kung saan ilalagay lahat, meron na rin pong aako dito. At dahil po sa kakulangan ng aming Special Education Fund, dahil karamihan po ng aming barangay ay talagang forested area. So hindi po yan titulado, walang real property taxes. Umabot lang po kami ng kalahating milyon nitong taon na to sa aming Special Education Fund. So ang ginawa ng aming local government unit kasama itong lalo na yung local school board ay prioritize na lang po itong pera na to para sa pagkuha ng mga teachers ed. Yung teachers ed po, kinukuha po namin yung talagang nakapasa na sa licensure examination for teachers. Now, sa tuwing meron po kami mga pagtitipon, parati ko pong sinasabi sa kanila, kasi dati po nung nag-usap-usap tayo sa San Antonio, parang nabanggit natin dati nung July, na itong mga actual learning experience ay talagang makikredit in times na mag-apply po sila sa DepEd for kung papasok na po sila. So ito po yung gusto ko pong isang gun sa inyo kasi ito po yung inaasahan dahil ito pong mga nakapasa na aming gustong kunin, may mga trabaho po sila at iniwan, may mga sweldo silang mas mataas. Yung offer po namin ay mga mabababa lang na pasweldo. Pero ang kasiguruduhan po na mapapasama sa kanilang ranking itong pagpasok nila as teacher ed, ito po yung inaasahan nila. So ang ano ko po, Yusek San Antonio, matutulungan po ba natin dito po sa amin na ito pong gagawing actual learning experience ay talagang makikredit po. Kasi ang amin pong plano, lahat po ng barangay ay natingnan na po namin kung saan po pwedeng magkaroon ng meron pa ring face-to-face pero talagang susundin po natin yung IATF guideline. Hindi po tayo magkakaroon ng face-to-face sa mga school dahil bawal. At tinututukan po namin yung ganon. Doon po sila magtuturo doon sa mga batang nahihirapang basahin. Kasi nailagay na po namin kung saan po, kung kailan dadalhin, kailan i-retrieve, kailan i-check yung mga gawa ng mga bata. Ito po bang aming move ay masusuportahan ng DepEd?
Mayor Rene ba? Renat?
Yes, okay lang po.
Ano po, yung pong, mayroon po kami, ang tabang po namin sa ilalabas naming DepEd order, Learner Support Aid, LSA, at parang nandun din po yung authority nyo kung gusto nyo silang bigyan ng kaunting honorarium or allowance, parang magagamit nyo po ito suporta pag pina-explain kayo ng COA na may basihan kayo. yung pong points sa experience, talaga pong inaano ko po yan, ini-insist na nabigyan. So kung titingnan ko po ulit yung ilalabas na guideline, kasi kung hindi, imubove ko po talaga na i-recognize kasi that's a valid experience for teaching. At i-recognize po natin yan. So papanindigan ko po yan na yung proposal na yan ay talagang ano natin, gagawin po natin para naman pag may mga items na, although mayroon din pong mga items na darating, medyo limited yata ngayong 2020, pero po ay pag nag-apply na talaga sila, magamit naman yung karanasan nila na mabigyan ng puntos or extra points sa kanilang application. So ano po, pinapanindigan ko po yan, pinapangako po na ipupush ko po talaga yan. Pero syempre po yung Execom 14 po kami, so palagay ko naman po hindi naman mahirap i-insist yung idea kasi hango naman sa totoong nangyari. At ang papalakasin nga po natin na itong ang iba para teacher, teacher aid, ang tawag po namin, ang pinaka-termino po namin officially sa DepEd, learner support aid. Talagang susuporta sa bata, sa mga pamilya na ang magulang ay medyo hindi masyadong may tiwala na kaya nilang mag-provide ng suporta sa anak nila. So maraming salamat po at nararamdaman po talaga namin yung suporta ng mga local officials. Marami po kayong may ganyang ginawa. May mga nagbigay nga po sa amin, may nagbigay sa amin ng pabatid na siya, bawat barangay 5 ang kinuha niya. Mga ganito po, depende naman siyempre sa inyong mga pangangailangan. Pero mayroong mga ganun talaga na na-recognize po nila na priority ito. At salamat po.
Yes, maganda pong marinig na talagang isusulong po natin itong adhikain na to na maisama. Thank you po, Yusek. Thank you.
Welcome po, Sir Rene, Mayor Rene.
Thank you po, Mayor Toyats. And up next po, Mayor Patty.
Good afternoon, Mayor
Good
Patty.
afternoon, Music Dad. So finally good to meet you. Meet you po online. Online lang po
Yes.
tayo. Sir Dads, tatanong ko lang po kasi I know DepEd gave an assistance, no, of actually for Ligaw 7 million. This was based on the number of enrollees per division, no. So we received 7 million, but sad to say, actually, when we computed for all students of Ligaw to be given the, you actually need to shell out another 18 million, no. So I talked with my superintendent, kay Sir Nelson po. And then, yeah, we came up with buying riso machines. So we are in the process of buying 15 already. But he has actually started using up the 7 million for the reproduction. So hopefully by this time, ready na po kami for the first quarter. No, but this is only for the first quarter. How about po sa coming quarters? May assistance pa po ba from the national? Kasi po medyo mabigat masyado kung LGU ang sasagot just to ensure na lahat mabibigyan. Parang not even half of it is being sourced from DepEd funds. So ang ginawa po namin, inuna muna namin na masolusyonan yung problem ngayong quarter. And then sabi ko, Nelson, we move on to the next problem once this quarter has been resolved. So hopefully, sabi namin, fingers crossed, baka by that time, ang national would be able to prepare and give more assistance to the different divisions.
Mayor Patty, yung mga financial concerns, ang information ko is not really very accurate, but I know na Yusek Ancivilla, who's in charge of this, has been trying very hard to put together another pool, some of the programs that we decided to stop so that we can fund the reproduction of the modules for the rest of the school year better. So para pong mayroon namang lalabas pa, and then ang isa pong ang kina-clarify din po namin, may mga options. May susunod pa ho yata.
Hindi po ba sa succeeding quarters na yung modules will all be coming from national printing?
Yung pong third and
Possible
fourth
po ba yun?
quarter, ang third and fourth quarter po, we are in like we have done 2 meetings na with the private publishers. So ang intention po namin sa last 2 quarters, meaning the second semester, will be centrally procured. Talaga lang pong we decided to do the like this scheme now kasi it would have been more difficult kung nag-procure po tayo centrally. Yung mga procurement protocols would not have allowed us to actually produce the materials on time. So talaga pong first 2 quarters, yung issue po nyo na nag-invest, narinig ko rin kanina sa isang mayor, don't worry because these machines, even if the central office will provide the third and fourth quarter needs, centrally na po yung I understand, i-engage pa rin yung mga local printers, pero parang kung may scheme sila niyan na ang kausap namin, government agency in charge of printing, sila yung nagpa-farm out ng parang subcontracts so that it would also be quickly delivered to the field. Magagamit pa rin po yan kasi other than the SLMs, we will still be using learning activity sheets, pero smaller scale na po ito, hindi na kasing dami ng ginagawa natin ngayon. So the activity sheets, yung pong mga natin, mga assessment, local assessment mechanisms, kaya hindi po dapat magkaroon ng kaba na we will waste the investment on these reproduction machines if the central office will be the ones to do it in the succeeding grading periods. Kasi po, ang DepEd po, palagi namang nangangailangan ng reproduction machines kahit in the old normal, need po namin ito kasi we really encourage teachers to design their own instructional materials. So, yun po ang dyan, ang sagot. So, yung pong expectation for more funds, I'm sure may ilalabas pa po. Ang pagkakaalam ko po, kahit dito sa Bayanihan 2, may na-allocate din pong additional funds for self-learning modules. And although ang disadvantage po ng medyo mas maperang local governments, ito po kasing allocation namin did not just consider the enrollment. We also made it equitable. Meaning, yung mga generally better off na local governments, there was this formula that we used na yung mga NCR governments, and I know Ligao could be in that category pag pinag-usapan na yung Bicol divisions, yung pong mas mahirap na mga bayan, parang may factor kaming ginilang na compensate ng kaunti, na mas marami yung binigay sa kanila. So I'm very sorry, Mayor, mukhang naging disadvantageous yun sa inyo, but we really felt that we had to be equitable to some point, to some extent, in providing support to the allocation of the SLM. So ito pong mga to, siyempre, input naming mga veterano sa DepEd, sabi namin, huwag niyo i-compare yung mga mayayamang local governments sa mga talagang, ako po, I come from a town na parang 5th class din. So, baka less than 1 million yung SEF ng bayan namin, and most likely hindi talaga makaka-afford ng more than what the others are able to do. And of course, yung iba po, nakikita naman namin yung mga very well-resourced governments, namili na ng tablets, which is also a big sa parang relief din sa amin kasi pag nag-tablets na sila, they will no longer print. They will just do digital learning resource. But anyway, ano po, yung pong tanong nyo kung magbibigay pa, ang alam ko po. Basta yung hanggang second quarter po yata ay collaboration pa rin with local units of DepEd. So at ang kausap naman po namin syempre yung mga superintendents. At alam namin most of them will always be in close contact with their mayors or governors or barangay captains, yung mga principal natin sa barangay. And ayun po ang namin. But we can also like guide na kung yung nagpo-provide din po ng technical support yung procurement team ng central office kasi may mga ibang nag-bid out sila ng kanilang so we also made sure that they were given support. Pero kayo po, I know, yung Ligao, yan, very dynamic. Yan lang. Sorry po, may bias ako kasi that's the only division I headed as a schools division superintendent, Mayor Pati, walang iba. Kaya nag-iisa lang ang Ligao sa puso ko pag division officer sa pinag-uusapan.
And I heard a lot of good things you did for Ligaw when you were the superintendent also. So thank you po, Yusek Dads. And
Regards to
good,
Tito,
apa.
Governor Landing and
It's
Mayor
reassuring
Alida.
also. Apa. And it's reassuring also na yung upcoming mga ang quarters pa will be provided by the national. I think for the next quarter, I think with the superintendent, we will still be able to pull this off together. And pero malaking bagay din, no? It's an investment. So kung ano po yung RISO machines na ibibigay ng city government sa DepEd will be used in the years to come. With
Yes po.
COVID or no COVID, magagamit po yun.
Yes.
So hindi po kami nangihinayang doon. And kasi malaki din po, kasi USEC Dads ang ang kahit ng procurement ng bond papers for
Yes
the
po.
rights. So malaking with the bulk of students that we have, malaki din po yung gagamitin. Pero as of now, yun nga, we tackle one problem at a time. So we were
Thank
able
you.
to pull off this squad.
That's so inspiring.
So next naman. Anyway, lahat naman po nasa-solve. So thank you po, Sir Dads, for that.
Yeah, thank you po.
Answer.
Pleasure to meet you, Mayor.
Okay, hope to meet
I miss you when I
personally.
dropped by there. Nagpunta ako doon one time.
Okay, thank you po.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Mayor Patty. Si Mayor Riza po of Alcantara, Romblon asked a similar question and I think nasagot na po ni Yusek Dads. But babasahin ko na lang po yung sharing niya dito. Sabi po ni Mayor Riza, the teachers are having a problem on how to sustain the production of modules. Our SEF is not enough to sustain the materials needed for the whole year. What they did, nagsosolicit po sila ng materials like bond papers and ink. Though sabi po ng DepEd may pondo daw po dito.
Ang comment po natin, we acknowledge that yung Brigada Eskwela, ni-reconfigure po natin. We still allowed solicitations but we never encourage cash. So dapat po in kind talaga siya. But we don't also encourage the teachers to do it. Kasi po yung mga schools, may school governing council yan. Kaya alam ninyo ito sa Sinergia. They should be the ones to be assigning a committee to help in the resource mobilization of the school. Yung pong issue on the inadequacy of the funds, ina-acknowledge po natin na hindi talaga ma-afford yung one-to-one ratio of SLMs. So even as we were talking about the LCP implementation, I was already saying, and so the regional directors are aware of this, even Secretary Liling knows this, nasabi ko, hindi naman kasi kailangan isa-isa, because you can use modules on rotation basis, maximum of 4 learners, so 25% lang ng requirements pwede na. But may dagdag lang na gagawin yung mag-disinfect ka ng module before you send it to the next user. And I know yung mga UV lights na available, very affordable naman for us to be able to do this. Pero ang mga nakita ko, kung medyo mahirap yung 4 ang gagamit, kasi this would mean na ang bawat linggo, ang bata, 2 subject lang inaaral, but mag-aaral siya ng lesson for the whole month. Yun po yung implication nito. Ang ibang na-monitor ko po, 2 ang gagamit, so 4 yung subject na aaralin ng bata sa bawat linggo, good for 2 weeks yung inaaral niya. So nagpalitan sila nung kamatch niyang bata na ginagamit yung ibang learning modules natin, ay saka lang, after 2 weeks, saka ulit mag-move sila sa next part of the lessons. Yung pong mga ganito, napaliwanag na po namin ito sa aming mga superintendents. Pero nga po, again, let me emphasize na hindi perfect yung pag-assimilate ng, pag-understand ng message. Minsan, nagkakaroon ng confusion. Halimbawa po, siguro some of you may have monitored na nagsabi na, nang dumating yung modules ng central office, pinatigil yung ginawa namin. Hindi po ganun yung usap namin. Nung kami po among ourselves, I'm not washing dirty linens on public, pero ang sinasabi ko po, may instruction kami. Ito yung by this date, kung hindi namin ma-share, gawin nyo na yung, gamitin nyo na yung nandyan sa inyo. So may mga deadlines po kami. Pero yung quality assure pa namin beyond the date, isi-share pa rin namin for the purpose of guiding the teachers para makita nila kung ano pa yung pwedeng i-improve dun sa ginawa nila without having to change the reproduction. So we are sad to note na mayroong mga nag-feedback sa amin na na-reproduce na tinigil para gawin lang yung ginawa po ng central office. That was never part of the instruction that we gave. So, ang mga ganito po, among ourselves ito, pero sinishare ko na rin sa inyo para pag nakwentuhan kayo, sabihin nyo, hindi ganyan yung pinapaliwanag sa amin ni Yusek Dads.
Right. Thank you po, Yusek Dads. And I think we have time for one last question. May gusto pa po bang magtanong, Mayors? Any question or comment po?
Ma'am Winona.
Okay po, go ahead po, Mayor.
Hi, Yusek Dads. Marami
Hello,
pong may
Mayor
lobby
Matt.
dito sa General Luna at sa buong Calabarzon. So, not related naman po dun sa topic, pero siguro po in some other time, kapag may pagkakataon po ako makavisit sa inyo personally, Yusek, kasi may hingin po akong tulong para may newly established po kasi kaming integrated school dito sa General Luna and one new public high school. Isang malaking public high school po yung bagong open namin. So baka po matulungan nyo kami na yung since local po muna yung nag-shoulder ng mga expenses kasi newly established siya, baka po by next year ma-accommodate na agad ng DepEd yung expenses lalo po dun sa salaries and wages ng mga teachers para po ma-unload yung aming LGU ng pondo para magamit naman namin sa other COVID-related programs yung fund po namin. Kaya po siguro kakailanganin ko yung tulong niyo, Yusek.
Oh, Mayor Matt, bigyan na kita ng tip. Ayusin nyo kaagad yung approval sa regional office. Sorry, hindi na ako ang RD dyan. Para mag-grant kayo ng yung ma-recognize na kayo as a school. Yung mga in-establish nyo, mabilang na at mabigyan na ng school ID number. Kasi pag nabigay naman na po yan, madali na yung pag-integrate ng budget ng school sa ano. So yun lang po yata. But I don't have with me at my fingertips yung mga requirements. You coordinate with your school officials kung ano po yung mga kailangan. But if you text me, I can also forward it to the office that issues the school ID numbers and the approval of the operation of the school para ma-expedite po.
Ayun, Yusek, for your information po, we have already the school ID. Approved na po ng region. So in less than a year, nakakomply kami sa lahat ng requirements. So sana po ay ma-priority lang po sa budget by next year. Na
Email po niyo po sa akin. Email niyo po sa akin yung document. Opo. Text niyo ako tapos bigay ko sa iyo yung email address ko.
Okay,
It's
maraming
actually
salamat.
my full name. Sige po.
Hingin ko na lang po kay Ma'am Winona yung contact details ninyo, Yusek.
Sige
Salamat po.
Sige po.
Yeah.
Yusek, isama mo na rin yung amin. Meron din kaming newly open na integrated school.
May school ID number ka na, Mayor Rene?
Meron na rin po.
Sige
kami rin po yung nag-shoulder. Email ko rin po yung details.
Yes, please. Opo.
Thank you po.
Okay po. Thank you, Mayor Matt and Mayor Toyats. If-forward na lang po namin sa inyo yung contact details ni Yusek Dads. But for now, may I ask everyone to turn on your video para makapag-photo op po ulit tayo. Right. Ready po? 1, 2, 3. Okay, maraming salamat po, Yusek Dads, for joining us today. Thank you as well, Sir Joaquin Hagedorn and Mayor Matt for your sharing. Now, para po sa closing remarks, may I call on the lead convener of Kaya Natin, Mr. Harvey Ke.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, of course, to our guests, Sir Hagedorn of Synergia Foundation, and of course, our Suke, Yusek Dads San Antonio. Thank you so much, Yusek, for always making time for us. I think pang-4 o pang-5 beses na natin to kasama si Yusek. hindi lang sa Kaya Natin movement, pati sa Jesse Robredo Foundation. And we hope that all national government officials will be like him, na who's very accessible and will always give time to explain new policies of our government. Thank you as well, of course, to Synergia Foundation, which continues to be one of the leaders in terms of innovating on education systems and education programs on the local level. Ever since Synergia was formed in 2002, the goal has always been working with LGUs in developing reading programs, in training our leaders, our principals, and ensuring that mayors become champions of education governance and education reform. So we'd like to thank our two guests for today. We'd also like to thank our mayors for making time to join us. We're very inspired by our mayors, sa totoo lang, because these mayors are the ones that really make things happen on the ground. Talagang sila yung talagang pag-asa ng bayan dahil every day they deal with all sorts of problems. From problems with regard to kailangan nilang humihingi ng panggastos, yung isang pamilya, pagkain, panggamot, panlibing sa patay, edukasyon, lahat na everyday dinaranas ng mga mayors yan. Kaya naman natutuwa ako na we have a very good set of LEAP fellows who continue to become exemplars of good governance and effective ethical and empowering leadership in our country. So again, on behalf of Kaya Natin, we'd like to thank Sir Hagidorn. Thank you, sir, from Synergia Foundation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harvey.
Thank you, Yusek Dads, as well, for the time that you have continued to give us.
Pleasure.
So, mayors, I hope na marami kayo natutunan today, and sana sama-sama tayong magtulungan with Synergia and with DepEd, of course, para sa edukasyon ng ating mga constituents, ng ating mga kabataan. This is really a very, very complicated time for all of us. Pero I'm sure pag magtutulungan lahat tayo, all sectors of society will do their own share, we will be able to help our children get a good quality education. Yun naman yung gusto nating lahat para sa mga kabataan natin. So thank you again to, of course, to our facilitator, si Winona, na walang katuguran. Thank you, Winona. Thank you for always leading our webinars. Thank you as well to our partner, San Miguel Corporation. San Miguel has always been one of our major partners in Kaya Natin, and especially in our LEAP program. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, mayors, and see you again in our next webinar.
Thank you po. Happy Saturday.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Thank you po. Bye-bye po.
Thank you po.